All right. So tonight's going to be a little different than it has been. We've kind of been just having one guy talk about a certain topic or something like that, and then have kind of Q&A afterwards. But tonight it's going to be kind of more of an interactive deal, and we'll just talk about, how do we program? Where do we get our information? If we have a question, where do we go? What resources do we use? And so Monte Sparkman is going to start us off talking about kind of where he goes for information or if he has a question about something. So, Monte, if you want to go ahead, take off, man.
Man, that's such a big that's such a broad question, because you're talking about kind of your professional network, and I guess I want to start off by saying that if there's somebody out there who you'd like to learn from, or there's somebody that you just want to see how they do things, man, reach out to them. Don't be afraid that they're not going to respond, because 99 times out of 100 that person's going to welcome you with open arms. Whether it's that's been my biggest experience, whether it's Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell, or whether it's the staff at TCU, or whether it's the staff at Baylor, or whether it's a high school coach down the road. Most people are, number one, going to be excited that you want to learn from them, because let's be honest, most of us are pretty humble individuals. And, whenever somebody wants to learn from us, at least I do anyway, I get fired up, and I probably go into information overload on them, but that's where it starts, so where do I go for information? Well, here in Texas, we have a great network of coaches. So, I'm very fortunate, and I'll say this, the longer that I've been in high school coaching, the more that I look to high school coaches for answers. That's not to take away anything from the college level, but I just feel like there's such a discrepancy between us and them. And so I'm going to look first at the high school level. So whether it's Kyle Keese, whether it's John Mitchell, whether it's Missy Macbeth or Rachel Hayes, or Steve Schween, or somebody like that, that's where I'm going to look first. I'm going to look first for answers within the people who are kind of on the same level playing field. Now, if I don't like those answers, or if those answers aren't what I'm looking for, then I'll go to the college level. And at the college level, man, there's a number of different people, that I can reach out to. One of them just came up on my text, Keith Caton. He's been at Baylor. He's now at Syracuse, a dear friend of mine. I interned under Frank Wintrick at UCLA. Again, a tremendous friend and great resource. And I sound like I'm name dropping here, and I really don't mean that, but these are people who I talk to on a daily, weekly basis for sure, but a lot of times daily. If it's a rehab question, or if it's something where I'm beat up, or I have an athlete going through something, then I'll hit up Donnie Thompson. So that's just kind of where I start. Is I kind of start locally with coaches who are kind of in my network, and then I kind of start to broaden that out. I'm not exactly sure, Dalton, if that's what you're looking for, but
this is exactly what I'm looking for, because I think that's kind of where the profession goes. I think a lot of times, I know when I was young, I just didn't know anybody. 6 years ago, I was fresh out of college, and I just didn't know where to go to find answers other than read books, and then books can only take you so far.
And so I'll say this. I came back to Texas in 2010. And one of the first opportunities I had, and I didn't know anybody from Adam, coming back to Texas. I was in Virginia for 3 years. But even when I was in Virginia, man, we went down to Virginia Tech, got connected with Ryan Horn when he was at VCU, who's been at Wake Forest, and now he's doing some special forces stuff. I always tried to put myself out there and meet as many people as I can. I consider myself a social person. I like the interaction and meeting new coaches, and so I guess it kind of comes natural to me. But going back to 2010, they had a strength clinic at Baylor, and me and actually Jeremy Weeks' coach. If Jeremy was in Texas for a long time as a high school strength coach, he's now at Penn on the East Coast. But so that's how I got linked up with Baylor, and then from Jeremy it was Kaz, and then the next year, Keith came down there, and then it was Roof, and it was Candace Walls, and it was Calais, who's now at SMU. I mean, it was just these people. If you have a passion for something, it's going to show. And I guess maybe that's the first thing is to don't be afraid to let your passion kind of show, because other people pick up on it, and they're going to welcome you into their world. And, once they see that you're for real, and that's going to look, differently for different people, and so I would say, reach out to those local people who are killing it in your area. Go to as many conferences as possible. I think last year I went to 9 different conferences, so, and that's from like January to June. Mm-hmm. And, that's a lot. That's a lot, but think of the amount of people that you meet at those conferences. Reach out to people on social media. There's a lot of connections that I've made through social media that I would have never made. Just kind of going that clinic route. So put yourself out there, be vulnerable, ask questions, because again, people are going to want to talk about their specialty.
Yeah.
So man, that's really kind of where I would start is, start locally and then kind of branch out. And then don't be afraid to call up that big name, don't be afraid to call up that big time D1, strength coach in your area. If they have something that you're really excited about, don't be afraid to do that,
Yeah.
Because again, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be right there with you, willing to share.
Yeah. Like Coach Simmons, he just put it in the chat, like social media is a huge deal, and Coach Simmons and I, probably wouldn't know each other if it hadn't been for Twitter, I mean, that's
right. No, absolutely.
Resource for people. And the same thing with Coach Bewley that's on here. I mean, Coach, where do you live, Coach Bewley?
Yo, what's up? I'm in a suburb of Phoenix. It's called Buckeye and Goodyear, and so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so I mean, he's in a different time zone, So without social media, the connections that we have wouldn't exist. I think you're at
and the other thing that I'll say, and this lends to my meatheadness, but if you get an opportunity to go train with other coaches, go train.
Yeah.
Because that's where you really learn who somebody is. And not from a max effort standpoint, but just, sharing the same iron with somebody, you connect. It sounds weird, but you connect on a different level. You just really do, So that gave me a lot of my quote unquote credibility when I had none. When I had zero coaching credibility, I had credibility under the bar. And, that, again, is going to open more doors because, our profession values that. They value guys who are, I'm not saying walking the walk, but they value guys who train.
Yeah.
And so that's another great opportunity to link up with people in a non-threatening, way, because you're able to actually, let some of your guard down, and really kind of show who you are, and they show who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that 100%. That was when I was with basketball at Ole Miss. We would travel across the country. I'd hook up, hey, coach, let me come, let's lift together, let's train. And just like you said, for some reason, it brings that guard down.
Yeah.
And it's no longer about what, the logo on your shirt. It's, hey, man, you like to train, I like to train. We both love to coach. It puts us on that playing field, and it just opened up some of the best conversations I ever had were with coaches I never knew. But you get under that iron, you get next to that bar, that platform. We might be doing completely different exercises, completely different lifts, but it brings everybody back to that core of what we do and why we do it, and that passion of training and all that. So I completely agree with that.
We had a session, we had a meeting. I guess it was, back in the late spring or early spring, maybe late winter, when there were 5 of us high school strength coaches in our area. We were all training together, doing 5 different things. And, but it was just cool, and it wasn't anybody trying to one up anybody or saying, hey, why are you Olympic lifting? We're over here bench pressing. Why are you squatting and snatching, or why are you trap bar deadlifting? It was just everybody was training, and that's the bottom line. To me, it's not, what you're doing. It's not necessarily the style that you believe in or participate in. It's just, are you doing something that's different? Are you doing something to better yourself? That to me is what it's about. And so, that's just another example of and then those conversations that come up from that. Well, hey, my shoulder hurts when I do this too. Or, hey, well, what about that new technology that's out there? Whatever it is, whatever it is. I think that's such a great opportunity, to grow, So anyways.
Yeah, man, I think you're spot on about that stuff. And I love going and talking to guys, I know anytime I go to UCA with Fodio down there, I'll learn something new. And those guys, they all train together and stuff. And, to talk about that bond, it's the same bond that our athletes build with each other. When you sweat with each other, there's something, that camaraderie gets built right there.
No question.
That bond. Yeah.
No question.
So,
but yeah, so I guess to kind of take 2 steps back, maybe, is to, first off, identify, your philosophies and identify those things that you want to learn about, and then go find out who those heavy hitters are, find out who you want to learn from, and then just hit them up, Like for you guys in Arkansas, I would highly encourage you to go down to Arkansas State with Jake Miller. Jake and I actually went to the same college, Baker University in Kansas. He's obviously younger than I am, but Jake was at Baylor the same time I was. And I mean, that dude, he's a tremendous strength coach. They're doing some really, really good things at Arkansas State. So if y'all are anywhere near there, that's one guy I would definitely try to link up with.
That's Coach Simmons. He's right. He's probably the closest one.
Yeah, it's about a 45-minute drive, and their center is a good friend of mine too. So we got that connection.
Okay. Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, like I said, Jake, they're doing great stuff. They're doing great stuff there. He was at Baylor. He was at SMU at college for a while, and then got the chance to go be the head guy out there. And like I said, he's doing some really good stuff.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, I would say you guys are welcome here anytime in Arizona. Maybe just not like right now.
Yeah, it's too freaking hot to go down there. I've been in Phoenix in June and July. It's no fun.
Hey, man, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the quarantine. Everything's not going great here. We've been on the news for all the wrong things.
That's the other issue.
We've been on the news for all the wrong things. But
because everything's shut down.
Yeah, but kind of going along with what you guys are saying, know people's specialties and where you're around. Like in Arizona, we have a group chat of about 20 high school strength coaches in our group chat, and they all have different specialties. I'm more of an Olympic lifting background. Well, there's guys like Steve Schween, who's more powerlifting, and Chris Musselman, who's more powerlifting. And so know who to go to is like, I would trust Steve, on teaching and clean any day of the week, but like he knows powerlifting just about better than anybody else in the nation. And so if I have a question, I'm going to him. And so just knowing who to go to, where to go to is huge. And don't be afraid to ask, what people do. Like it's been said, you'll be really surprised on just how knowledgeable some people are. And you'd have no idea unless you find out. You just have to extend that bridge.
Yeah. It's almost like, I've said this before that we are on an island as high school strength coaches. It's just us. Our college staff have anywhere from 10 to 20. And so really, what I've tried to do is make up a group of assistants, quote unquote, so that if I have a question on movement, boom, I call this guy. If I have a question on, and that guy's going to be Kyle Keith, if I have a question on triphasic, I'm calling Dustin Rotan. If I have like some admin stuff or something like that, I'm calling John Mitchell, or I'm calling Doug Bull, or I'm calling Jeremy Weeks. So it's almost like you create this virtual assistantship that you can reach out to, whenever you want to either learn more or, you have questions, because I'm a big believer of kind of carving out your niche. And Coach Clay talked about, with Steve being powerlifting, him being Olympic lifting, powerlifting is kind of my background, the quote unquote strength side of the conditioning continuum. It doesn't mean that we're not versed in the others. It just means is that's kind of our niche. And so, it's good to have other experts in those other niches that you can reach out to, especially when they're local, and they're kind of in the same boat we are. So,
yeah, definitely. So I've also noticed that, anytime I go and talk to somebody and I'll be like, well, hey, can I have, your chart that looks like this, or your Excel sheet or whatever, they'll give you whatever. They'll just be like, here, give me your flash drive. And they'll just max it out with everything that they have. And I love looking at that stuff, and not necessarily like, copy and paste anything, but it gives me ideas to incorporate with what I like to do, or
there's some etiquette, I think, that kind of goes along with that. Hold on one second. I'm gonna put you guys on mute.
Okay. It's probably been my favorite thing about this quarantine thing is all the Zoom meetings and stuff. Like, I love watching the interviews where like they're interviewing like it could be like Brad Pitt or something, and they'll be asking him questions and stuff. And then all of a sudden he's like, hold on. And like, they got to address a kid on the other side of the room. Like, hey, you stop jumping on your sister or whatever. I love that. I think that's been the best part of all this stuff.
I feel that when I was running my classes, because we had digital check-ins a couple times a week, I had it set up. My wife was working, and she works with children with special needs. So because of HIPAA, she couldn't be disturbed during the day. So I had juggle watching our 4-year-old and running my classes at the same time. That worked out as well as you could probably imagine that it did. And I would have it set up so that, she'd be on the couch watching a movie, and I kids, and there'd be times where she'd like jump off the couch, and the kids are like, hey coach, you gonna go get her? I was like, yeah, give me a sec, guys. Or they'd be like, hey, Coach Clay.
Yeah.
So you said there was some etiquette to that, you think?
Yeah. So
it's like, well, first of all, 15-year-old. And so just little. Oh, go ahead, Coach. We're just talking.
Oh, right on. No, to me, that's one of those unwritten deals where, like, if you ask for something, be prepared to offer something in return. If it is a sheet or I would say, try to make sure that there's some substance with that relationship, before you you start to take from their program, just to make sure that there's a equal level of respect there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Because there's so many people out there that if you put something up on Twitter, hey man, can I get that? Can I get that? Can I get that? And yeah, you're probably going to give it to them, but I just think that it's always good to, like, if there's a coach, that I want to borrow from or whatever, I try to offer them, whether it's a book or whether it's something I've created, I try to reciprocate that just out of respect. And I think that's always, good to do because that Excel sheet they're giving you, or that whatever it is, it took time for them to create. And yeah, somebody else probably gave it to them too, but they've made it their own and this and that. So just out of respect for that coach, I think it's a good idea to try to have something
it's kind of like
in return.
Kind of like a Dances with Wolves situation, you
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, here I come offering this, for your that or whatever it is. And are you always going to be able to do that? I don't know, maybe not, but I think it's, when you can, maybe it's not right then, maybe it's, you did get a book or you did get something else. Hey coach, I thought this was really cool. I'd like to share it with you. Or something is like, hey, I'm asking you about your program. Here's a program I've created. Will you take a look at it? That way it's not just, hey, I want your information. It's, here's what I've created, and here's how I'm trying to apply your information. Can you help, or does it make sense, or something like that,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that asking for critique is huge. When I was job hunting, when I was trying to find my place, I put together basically a department handbook, a strength handbook, and I just put on Twitter like, hey, I'm looking for an established coach to review this to give me honest feedback. And it was Kyle Keese who hit me back up. And he didn't know me. I was fresh from being fired from UNLV. Nobody knew who I was. And he said, send it over, and took a look at it and said, hey, I really like this, but these things need to be changed, and you should probably change these. Thank you so much. And just being honest and open, and that was huge. And I mean, there's times I still thank him for that to this day. And when you reach out and you ask for help, definitely be grateful for it. Because I mean, think about any kid that we've worked with, you help, and they're like, thanks coach. Yeah, I'm really going to go out of my way to help that kid again. And the same's true with us. If once we get help, if we don't show that thankfulness and that appreciation, then that's a disservice. We just did that person a disservice.
Yeah. And that's something else I try to do is, anytime, you have a positive interaction with somebody, boost them up on social media, I mean, it seems silly, but it's, hey man, just had a great talk with Coach XYZ, he's a great guy, really appreciate his time, because that's the other thing is, we all have, finite amounts of time. And when somebody, like this Zoom meeting, there's other things we could be doing right now. Like I could be hanging up a tarp in my weight room trying to cool it down, but I felt like it's important to be on here, to share, but also to learn, and so I just think anytime, like you said, you can be gracious, it's going to pay dividends huge down the road. So
I feel you. Some of us are running errands and filling up our wife's car right now.
See, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
But,
I think
and of course,
the honest critique stuff is so big. Like I've asked, John Lepo at Euler, like, hey, like, look at this. What do you think? And I like going to him because that Yankee New Yorker in that guy is going to give me absolutely what he thinks, and he's not going to care what I think about it. He doesn't care my feelings, but I want that. I want him to be honest with me. Like if I'm doing something stupid, I need him to be like, hey, that's stupid. Like you don't need to do that,
Well, and that brings up another good point. When you're talking critiques is find those people who will be honest and not just, oh man, that's awesome. That's great. Good job. Find people who will actually, comb over it and pour into it and actually give you honest feedback. that's something that I struggle with our coaching staff is, typically I'm in the weight room pretty much year round, and they do all the movement stuff that I program. So when I asked them, hey, how did this drill go? Oh, it was good. Well, no, what about it was good? Give me details. And if it sucked, tell me it sucked. Don't just say, hey, plan was great today, did a good job. No, if something was wrong, tell me what's wrong so we can fix it and make it better, But getting and a lot of times they think it's going to hurt my feelings, and depending on what day, sometimes it might, But generally speaking, I'm not out there, so I don't get to see it ran, and so I need their feedback of, hey, this was good, this wasn't so good, tweak this, let's change this organization, because we're not going to do it perfectly every time, especially from a conceptualized perspective. So, and that's kind of a different tangent than what we're talking about tonight. But yeah, that genuine feedback is desperately important. So,
yeah, it's one of those things that I treasure. Like if I've got a real question, like, hey, what does this look like? I can go to certain guys and be like, all right, they're going to give me an honest answer.
Yep.
And that's so hard to find, so that's
no question.
All right. So we've kind of talked about networking and how big of a deal that is in our profession. And we've talked about a lot of names in Arkansas and Texas, across the country, collegiate level, high school level. And that's all really good. And that's where I think a lot of people make a lot of big jumps, because you can, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, when you connect with people. But are there certain things that have impacted you guys, books, podcasts, interviews, things like that from certain people that you guys would be willing to talk about?
This is kind of a cop-out, but all of Louis' articles, early on, and then, of course, Book and Methods, any of those things are going to be good. Contradictory to that, I'll say, Dan John's Easy Strength was a really, really good read. That was a huge impact for me, made a huge impact for me when I was at the middle school level. So where you are now, that's a really good book. Joe Kinn's Tier System book, again, is probably one that gets referenced a lot for me, just from an organizational standpoint. When I was at North Texas, Frank introduced me to the tier system, and that completely, revolutionized kind of how I program, just because it took it from an upper lower kind of a powerlifting bodybuilding split, to a true total body experience, which, I'm fully convinced that that's how you need to train, just because that's the way movement is. That's the way sport is. It's total body. It's not upper lower or, any other way. So that's been really beneficial. Anything by Charlie Francis with regards to sprinting, that's been really, really good for me. Trying to think what other books out there, 531 from Wendler. Again, that kind of goes, in my powerlifting genre of things. That stuff is good from a programming standpoint, just because it's so simple. We don't have to be so complex with how we do things. Keep it simple, and that's a great system. Not to beat that anymore. So for me, yeah, those are kind of my top resources right now. I'm not as academic as maybe I should be with regards to reading. I mean, typically if I have a question about something, I'm more on the practical side. So I'll call somebody and say, hey, how are you doing X, Y, Z? Rather than reading about it, I'll say, because really I don't care why it works. Like, I just need to know that it does work.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'll do, is I'll reach out before I'll reach to a book. And then after I've implemented it for a while, then I might get the book and read and say, okay, well, now this makes more sense. Like with RPR, for example, I did it on myself for probably close to a month, before I took the course because I wanted to kind of know what questions to ask or what answers I wanted, and then I reached out to coaches who are implementing it, so I think you kind of have to, dive into it, drink from the water hose, so to speak, and then you can start to figure out kind of what questions you want to ask and kind of what direction you need to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Louis was a really big influence on me, especially early on. I felt like the conjugate method, even at a younger age, I felt like, it could be implemented safely and still produce a lot of really good results.
No question. No question it can.
And then,
but if you don't, but if you don't try it and implement it, then you don't know that.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have, this perception of it, good or bad. And so until you try it, and that's anything, like my last year at VMI, I was training to do a weightlifting meet. And this was like 6 months after I squatted 1,000, why do a weightlifting meet? Well, because I'd never done it before. And so if I'm going to be doing these movements, like, let's see if I can get strong, kind of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And that's, and then you start talking about the tier system, when I saw that last year for the first time at the National High School Conference, and I thought that right there is so logically simple.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense.
It makes sense.
And, and I'll talk to coaches about it now. I recommended his book the other day, and I was like, it's not because it's just this groundbreaking thing. It's just, it's so easy to program, and it makes sure you get everything in that you want to get in. And it allows you to, I feel like, kind of steal some volume, that stuff.
Yeah, no doubt.
Instead of having, you take a 4-day program or week, 4-day week that like we have right now, and you get 2 lower days and 2 upper days. Well, if I do upper every single day and have an emphasis on just 2 of them, well, then I get 4 days of upper and 4 days of lower versus just 2 or 2. Well, I can steal a lot of volume that way.
Exactly.
And that's what I thought the huge advantage of using the tier system was. So, and kind of like I was talking earlier, I liked, that's what I always try to do is I'll try to go grab something that somebody does, or I'll read a book and figure something out in that book and say, you know what, like, I think I can mesh that into what we already do, and whether it's from, Todd Barber, who was at Arkansas, that's at Washington State now, and his phases and how he goes through those phases with kids, and use of the tier system, or, seeing how the conjugate method works with all that kind of stuff. You can kind of blend and kind of create your own.
And that's where conferences come into play, because you hear somebody talk about a topic, and then that kind of gets you excited to go back and read it. We went to that track football consortium back in January, and the guy who trains McCaffrey, I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, he recommended the book.
Lauren Landau is his name.
No, not him. He's a high school guy. He's out of Colorado.
Oh, the Kahlua guy, the CLU.
Yeah, Brian Kula. Yeah,
Kula,
Brian Kula. Right. So we heard him talk in January, and he brought up the book by I think it's Dan Ross or something Ross, the underground sprinting something. Again, I'm butchering this. It tells you,
it's all good.
My attention, but it's like the underground sprint secrets or something. I mean, that's a really interesting concept, where he's talking about what is it, like mass specific training or mass specific acceleration or something like that. Basically, it was a very simplistic way to train, and it was very specific in the sense that there's no eccentric stuff. It was all short ranges of motion designed to improve your sprinting. And so anyways, had I not gone to that, and had I not, been exposed to that. That's why clinics are so important, man. And that's why it's good to go hear people that maybe you wouldn't normally hear, and it's good to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, can we talk about that for a second? I know that's kind of like a tangent or whatever, but
what, comfort zone?
no, like the eccentric part of training. Like what? Yeah. So I've never really been, a triphasic guy. But I've been around a lot more people lately who are more triphasic, principled coaches, and the eccentric, specifically training the eccentric part of the contraction always, to me, I always felt like, okay, I'm specifically training them to slow down or to not be fast. And that's not exactly what I want. So am I just missing a link here in the chain, or and I understand like it helps them put on mass and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want that to be at the sacrifice of speed and power.
Well, I utilize triphasic with my incoming and with my freshman level classes, because that eccentric training, especially kind of my favorite split, is 5 reps at 3 second eccentric. That is so good for a young kid to get a little bit of time under tension. And as they're out their movements, especially in the squat, and it really slows it down. And I can keep a group of 40 and a kid will really spot out elasticity in establishing that motor unit connection. And so that's personally why I use it, especially with my younger levels, because it's just such a good job ingraining those good movement patterns.
So they just have more body control with it?
I mean, that's what I've heard the big benefits of eccentrics are, especially with younger, inexperienced athletes, is it teaches them, proper positioning. The other thing it does that you talked about is it talks about being able to decelerate, and, that's a big part of sports. We tend to want to live in the acceleration mindset because we always think go fast, go fast, go fast, go fast. Which is what you just alluded to was, hey, I don't ever want to train slow.
Yeah.
But at some point you're going to have to stop. And I think that he's training that eccentric component is a way to teach that deceleration in the weight room. And I think a lot of people see benefit from that. And obviously I'm sure there's a lot more benefits to it from guys who are way smarter than me. But that's why I don't use it, just because I really don't understand it. And I just haven't really dove into it like maybe I should. But like Clay said, obviously, teaching positions, teaching them how to stop. And then I think the eccentric portion also does a lot for tendon and ligament strength, so there's some benefits from that there.
Yeah.
A really good resource for triphasic training is Coach Mayer up at Farmington, up in Minnesota. He utilizes a lot of triphasic training in his training. And so if you guys want to get a hold of him, just private message me and I'll send you his contact information, because he does triphasic with just about every student that he has up there at Farmington and has some really good results from it, and kids who can handle a good amount of weight with some good amount of tempo. So that's a really good resource to look out for.
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I'd say, again, Dustin Rotan down here in Texas, he does a lot with triphasic. He'd be another one to reach out to too.
What would be the detriments of – so I've seen some coaches, like they'll always do a 3-second negative on all of the lifts. Is there a detriment to doing that, like all the time, like that being a principle of the strength conditioning program, always having – a 3-second?
I think so. Because you never – because at some point the athlete has to learn how to reapply that force. If all they're doing is learning how to absorb, that they never learn how to use that stretch shortening cycle to re-accelerate
Mm-hmm.
out of that eccentric phase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, and
Well,
so
that's why.
that's why.
Well, that's why if you look at the triphasic, most triphasic blocks are 2-week blocks, where it's a 2-week concentric, a 2-week isometric, and then a 2-week
Right.
eccentric. And so you're doing just enough over those 2 weeks to create the adaptation, and then you're moving on to another phase. And so now the body has to readapt to that different stress. And especially if you're using overcoming isometrics, where you're just going to get some dead stop for 10 seconds worth of a pull, that's going to fire up every motor unit that you got. And so you are going to learn to reapply the force, but where you are is you're just establishing those patterns in those first 4 weeks. And then when that time comes for week 5, concentric week 1, and on that same load, I've seen kids fly where they're like, man, I thought that 135 was going to be super hard, but it's flying. It's like, well, that's because you adapted. You've ingrained that good movement pattern. Now that load's feeling pretty light. And so,
yeah, and that's why with that triphasic concept, I think the last 2 weeks are always a concentric emphasis where you're moving the bar as fast as possible, because you want to end that phase with that high speed, that high rate of force development.
Okay.
You know, so yeah, Coach Clay is right. You know, where you're teaching the body how to produce force in various positions, and then once you have that firing pattern set up, then you let it go. You know.
Okay.
Around those eccentrics, like let's say if you got weight releasers in your weight room, you could hit a good hard, 3 to 5 second eccentric phase. Those weight releasers hit the ground, and then suddenly you're anywhere from let's say we're 50 to 100 pounds lighter in load, and man, you can rocket that thing up and really get some high velocity and some high power output from using the weight releasers. I know Alan Bishop talks a lot about weight releases in his program, and man, you can play around with it a lot when you have resources to do so.
Yeah, that's the other thing, and that's why those college guys are, take them with a grain of salt, just because they do have. Alan's weight room is beautiful, and Alan's a phenomenal coach. He's a great dude. I love Alan. He's a good friend of mine. But that's one of those situations where you may not be able to implement what he's doing because you don't have those implements.
Yeah.
But yeah, weight releases are good too. They're really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
or you don't have those
recreate.
athletes who can take it and have the physical base to do it.
Do what? We didn't hear you.
Do what? Okay.
Coach Bewley, we didn't hear you.
Oh, whoops, my bad. So I was just saying, or you don't have the athletes that can handle that stress load. That's the main one. Because honestly,
bingo.
I got some strong kids, but there's maybe 5 to 8 kids that I feel comfortable with a weight releaser on their back. And that's maybe being generous.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. And that's why, people talk about using, whether it's velocity based or triphasic or overspeed eccentric, which is what you're talking about. There's only going to be a small sampling of your athletes who can handle that type of or who are ready for that type of style of training. I mean, the other 98% of them need to be just doing a basic linear progression. That's my 2 cents on it.
Absolutely. I mean, at the conference we had Coach Jacoby talk about, when he first got to Strong Rock, he bought, I think, like 10 mega hex, like 90-pound hex bars for kids who weighed less than the hex bar. And so he didn't buy for his population, so he had to get rid of all those and get the standard 45-pound, 25-millimeter handle trap bars, because that's all that the kids could handle at the time. Mm-hmm. And eventually they built up so they could handle those bigger bars. But, it's the population that determines the program, not the program that determines the population.
Yeah. And I'll say this, that's tough for me, because I want to buy those things that I want to train with or that I have trained with, because you have that experience.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those deals where you might want equipment XYZ for you, and it may not be the best for your athletes. So, that's obviously a fine line that we have to walk whenever you do get to order some stuff.
Hey, I've snuck those into the order. I've snuck those in to the purchase orders. They never gotten approved, but that means I can't try it again the next time.
Yeah, no doubt. No, put it in. Make them tell you no. Make them tell you no.
Awesome. That's great, guys. Hey, are there any podcasts that you guys like to listen to?
Man, here, can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So the new one that Steve Olson came out with, the Strength Coach Pro podcast, that's been really good.
Yeah, we sure can.
Yeah, that's been good. Bird Sports Performance has been good. Lee Taft podcast. The pacing
I didn't know he had one.
Do what?
I didn't know he had one.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Pacey Performance is another really good one. They have some smart dudes on there. Just Fly It is another good one on movement. Just Fly Performance podcast. And then, of course, the West Side Room, but they haven't put out stuff in a while.
Yeah.
But those are some of the ones that I listen to. The Art of Coaching, Bartholomew's isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Ivey, who was at Arkansas State, he's got one Beyond Sets and Reps, isn't bad.
Yes, it's really good.
Yeah, the older strength chat from Chris Duffin, Kabuki.
Yeah.
If you go back to some of his older ones, they're really good. And then I don't know that he's put out one in a while, Gage, but that Big Time Strength, I enjoyed that. That was really good.
Yes. I just
but
recently found that one, and I think that's such a great idea. And it there's a lot more high school strength coaches on there. I've listened to a bunch of his. I really liked it.
Yeah, so like those are some of the ones that are on my queue. I mean, I couldn't tell you those off memory, but those are the ones. And typically what I'll do is, like, if I'm looking to hear a particular person, like last night, for example, I'm starting to get interest in the fifth set. So it's another one of these kind of like 5-3-1 where it's packaged up in a nice, neat, program box. But the guy's name is Corey Burns or Swede. And so I just went online and was like, Swede Burns podcast. And then boom, it came up. And then so I just pulled one of them up and started listening to it, So a lot of times that's what I'll do is if I want to hear a guy, I'll search him and find out, podcasts about him and then pull those up, And the other thing that I think is really good, and I'm not sure, maybe everybody does it and I'm just the last one to the party. But if I see a tweet or if I see an Instagram or whatever that I like, I'll send it to me. I'll DM myself that tweet or that video. And then I go back through like once a week and I look at everything I've sent myself to kind of catch up on, oh, hey, that was cool. Or, hey, that wasn't cool or whatever, but just that way it's kind of a running professional development vlog, so to speak, That's another great way to kind of keep track of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two more really good podcasts that have a lot more high school guys on it. Die Healthier. It has a lot of high school guys on it. And then also Strength Talking Shop with Matt Smith. Both of those have a lot of high school guys. And Steve was actually just on Strength Talking Shop and did a great job with that. And so those are two more that have a lot of high school guys and shameless plug because I was on both of them. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
But shameless plug. Right. But they really do a good job. But I'm gonna ask you guys this: do you guys like to listen to podcasts that are not strength and conditioning related? Because I know I get to a point where I can only hear so much reps and sets talk before I need to hear something else. So do you guys kind of branch off into other subjects?
I'll listen to Joe Rogan every now and again, but that's probably as far as I get away from it.
I like listening to any interview with David Goggins. You get some great one-liners with that guy.
Yep. I'm still chasing the football coaching dream. I'm not fully sold on being only a strength coach, so I'll listen to a lot of football stuff. Anything that Rick Jones, he's kind of a legendary football coach in Arkansas. He's now at the University of Missouri. But anytime he has a podcast or anytime he has an interview that he talks to anybody, I'll sit there and listen to it. He actually did a series this past year, and they would interview him every week for about 40 minutes. And it was really cool, except for the week that we played him. I didn't like that. Just like a drum, but it was really good. But then it's not necessarily a podcast, even though he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast before, but anything by Malcolm Gladwell. He's kind of a high-level thinker. He's written a book called Outliers, where he goes and looks at different phenomena on why certain people are successful and tries to go and figure out those sorts of things. And generally there's some sort of, time, they were born in the right time, doing the right thing, and some sort of adversity that they had forced them to be successful. And so that's kind of interesting. I always like to see what he has to say about certain situations. So those are
Did you say that was Dalton?
Malcolm Gladwell. He also wrote a book called David and Goliath, where he talks about why David at first, looks like he has all the disadvantages and ends up being victorious, but how he made his disadvantages his advantages, and how he kind of changed the rules or, modified the rules a little bit to the game and found a way to win. And I love that as a coach, pushing the limits of what you can do to figure out a way to win, because you're always going to be at a disadvantage. And if you always look at the disadvantage part, then you're going to miss out on a chance to really do something special one day. So that's what I really liked about it.
Y'all are gonna laugh at me for the other podcasts I like to listen to, because I'm a giant freaking nerd. There are 3 podcasts that are actually YouTube big, a 30-minute deep dive into a person or subject, and from all walks of life. The one I just recently listened to was Maximilien Robespierre, the guy who started the French Revolution. But like I said, I'm a giant freaking nerd, so
You sound like Steve.
I love listening to that stuff. And actually, I've been lifting to that stuff. That's how much of a freaking nerd I am. So,
Yeah,
I mean, you guys can judge me all you want.
I can't get to thinking too much on that deal. I start going down dark rabbit holes. I can't do that. So I try to keep it very, very shallow, very superficial.
Yeah. No, I'll listen to some of them.
I just had to tap into my nerd, man.
Yeah.
Hey, no doubt. There is one. So on YouTube, there's a guy called Trey Smith. And if you really want to go down some weird rabbit holes with like religion and with like conspiracy theories and things like that, Trey Smith is one that will really challenge your thinking on a lot of different stuff.
Awesome.
So, anyways.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're hitting it at about an hour. We're actually at about 50 minutes. So if there's any other thing that like you use or have used in the past that you're like, hey, if you haven't heard of this or seen this, like this is something to go look in or check into, what would it be?
I mean,
Have you guys heard?
Do what? Say that again. He must be in the desert. He's cutting out.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's cutting it out.
You go ahead, Coach.
Say it again, Coach.
The one program that's been really, really good for us, I would say.
Coach Bewley, we can't hear you, man. You're muted.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was driving through the neighborhood, and I had to make sure I didn't hit a neighbor.
There you go.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Kids are crazy around here. But I don't know if you guys have read Jeff Connor's book, Strength Coach Called to Serve. Have you guys read his book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it. I've heard of it.
It's a really, really good book, and that was really the first book that turned me on to the connection side of things for the strength coaches, because before that I read a lot of programming, and that's all I really read. And then when I read that book, it really kind of struck a nerve with me on the importance of connections with your athletes. And what we do if we're not connecting, then we're really not doing a full service. And that book really changed my outlook on coaching. And it is written from a religious perspective, so if that stuff annoys you, sorry, it gets into that. But great book for what it is to really serve your community and serve.
No, that sounds good. I'll probably have to check that one out.
That's a good book. Dalton, if you're talking about something that's helped us from a technology standpoint, I would say the addition of Rack Performance has really been a game changer for us, just from a software standpoint. I'm not sure if anybody uses, that or Team Builder or whatever, and but that's been really, really good for us.
I know that a lot of coaches either use Rack or Team Builder.
Yeah.
I haven't been one of them yet. I haven't been at a place where I've gotten to,
Got to be able to do that. That's the other thing,
But every coach that I've said, and that's the thing is people think, well, you go buy that, then you don't program for your kids anymore. It's like, no, that's not it. It's just how you distribute the information. And
especially during these times where you need some kind of platform, to get information to your kids, it's been invaluable for us, and I'll even say just from the efficiency of our room, it's been a game changer because now everything is on a timer. Mm-hmm. And so you have to stay on track, and as being in high school, time is a huge commodity.
It's the most valuable thing you got.
Yeah. So, we try to squeeze every minute out of it. And that's been really, really good for us. So that's kind of a shameless plug. I've been doing a lot with them lately. But I just like their product has been really, really good. And they pour back into high school coaches and I actually looked at switching to Team Builder for some other technology reasons, but Rack kind of stepped up to the plate and drew me back in, so I would say, try to get a trial and just check it out. And they'll probably shoot me for saying this, but we used it for almost a year before they asked for any type of, monetary compensation or whatever. So, they give you time to kind of figure it out, determine if it's going to work for you. And it's been really good for us. Really good.
Awesome. I definitely feel like that's where it's going. Because and like I said, I've never worked off of that, but I've got 18 different ways on Excel or Google Sheets to do what I do.
Yeah. And it doesn't take the place of those per se, but it does. To me, it just adds a level of organization to our time, to our block of time that hasn't been there. And it does allow us some different data collection options to where we've gone paperless with a bunch of that stuff, And I'm sure they got even other stuff out there I don't even know about because I haven't, I just got to stay in my one little how I use it, I haven't branched out much, but yeah, it makes our room so much more efficient. Like I'm able to run 3 different groups in the same room at one time. That's how efficient we become, so. Anyways.
And like you said earlier, time is the most valuable thing.
Yeah. It is, especially when you only have one room. You got to make it, you have to make it work.
Yeah. And I had my first staff meeting the other day as a head coach, and I said, was talking to our guys, and I said, we have to develop a system for everything that we do. And if there's a way to make it more efficient, do it. You have my standing permission to make it more efficient because that's the most valuable thing that we have. And any time that we waste time, it either A, gets us beat, or it takes us away from our kids, and neither one of those are what we need to do.
And I'll say this, and I've been wanting to put a tweet about it, but I just haven't figured out the right way to frame it. But I was listening to Tony Holler the other day, and he made the comment that some of the hardest working coaches are the worst coaches. And I think that's so true, is because, you know, those coaches want to hide behind, look how hard we're working, but they don't focus. They focus on the work and not the results.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been in programs where they talk about outworking everybody. And, like, I don't want to outwork you. I want to work smarter than you to get more results than you do. It's not about – I mean, yeah, I can walk 26 miles to downtown Fort Worth and, oh, look how hard I worked. Or I can hop on my truck and do it and, you know, do it in a 20th of the time.
Yeah.
And we both end up at the same destination, you know? So yeah, man, if you whatever you can do to make your life more simplistic and more efficient. The other concept we talked about was a book called Essentialism, and basically just talked about, you know, just making, you know, finding the meat and potatoes of what you do and making those the most important, you know?
Yeah.
So just a couple other things there as we wind down.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's all I got. If y'all are good with it, we'll call it a night.
Yeah, I'm going to jump off here and go do some work real quick.
Awesome. Guys, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you showing up, you know, almost every week or every week, and kind of keeping this thing going. It's a thing I just feel like I'm called to just at least have it, you know, to bring us together and to kind of have this kind of thing going every day or every week. So appreciate you guys investing your time. I know you could be spending it with your families and stuff, so I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Hey, we'll see you soon.
Hey, we'll see you.
All right.
Y'all take care.
Y'all have a good week.
Stay safe.